Hello, this is Pastor Don and Donna Long, once again with the Jewish Roots portion of Faith for Today. You know, in the book of Romans, Donna, Paul talks about the fact that we as Gentile believers in Yeshua have been grafted into Israel.
Yes.
And we were talking over the past weeks at a high level about some of the festivals, the appointed moeds, the appointed festivals in the Bible, in the book of Leviticus, of the seasons that God celebrates. You know, there are literally thousands of celebrations around the world. Every nation, every tribe seems to have its own holidays.
Yes.
But when you turn to the Bible, God says He has His own appointed holidays, and there are seven of them.
Yes.
But we know when we look at the scriptures that there were other events, other celebrations within the life of Israel that Yeshua, Jesus himself, celebrated. And one is coming up pretty quickly here on our calendar, and it is Hanukkah, which is also known as the Feast of Dedication. And we read about that in the Bible in John chapter 10. So why don't you read that verse for us?
Yes, in John chapter 10, verse 22, it says, "After this, the Feast of Dedication was taking place at Jerusalem. It was winter."
I think the New Living Testament as well has a translation
Yes,
for
it
that.
does. And in the New Living Translation, it says, "It was now winter, and Yeshua was in Jerusalem at the time of Hanukkah, the festival of dedication."
So right there in the Gospel of John, we have mention of Hanukkah.
Yes.
The Feast of Dedication. In most translations, if you have a paraphrase, it'll say it is the time of Hanukkah, and that Yeshua, Jesus, was there at that point celebrating with all the other people. This is a good indication that he not only celebrated the seven moeds, the seven festivals of God, but also more than likely observed Purim, and he observed certainly Hanukkah. In fact, he had a message to bring about being the light of the world, which was directly tied to Hanukkah.
To Hanukkah, yes.
And so Hanukkah is a great celebration. I think many in the world see Hanukkah like a Jewish Christmas.
Yes.
Because they tend to fall approximately in the same season of the year.
Yes, they do.
But celebrating entirely different kinds of events.
Yes.
Hanukkah is the event that happened during the period between the end of the Old Testament and the beginning of the New Testament. You know, when you read your Bible, you're going along and you read through the history books and the writings, and you read through the prophets, and then you come to Malachi.
Yes.
And Malachi is the last book of the Old Testament. And then you turn the page and it says the New Testament, and it starts with Matthew.
And people think that there was no pause in between there.
That's right. And there's literally
of the next page.
between the end of Malachi and the beginning of Matthew, there's 400 years of history.
That's right.
When you end this part of the Bible, the Persians are in control. When you begin this part of the Bible, the Romans are in control. And so you can miss the point that in between the Greeks were in control.
Much happened.
A lot of things happened.
Yes.
And during that time was when the Greeks took over the whole Middle East. And Antiochus sat on the throne of Syria. And one of the things that he did was to attempt to destroy all traces of Judaism. It sounds rather familiar, doesn't
Yes, it does.
Here we are in 2009, and there are those who would like to eradicate everything that's Jewish.
Yes.
We've talked about it in earlier broadcasts that Constantine in the 4th century did everything he could to eradicate
That's right.
any Jewish traditions from Christianity. And so this was a pattern of those people outside the covenant people of God, which was to destroy who these people were.
It's been a long time quest.
It's a long time.
Unsuccessful,
And
however.
who wins in the end?
Yes. Yeshua wins in the end. Abba wins in the end.
That's right. And so Antiochus issues these decrees that is going to obliterate or do away with all the Jewish traditions. When he took over Jerusalem, he literally slaughtered thousands of Jews. He desecrated the temple. He banned all practices of the Jews. He began to sacrifice pigs on the altar of the Holy of Holies. And he poured pig broth over all the Torah scrolls. This is a man who makes the insanity of the Middle East look like it's been going on forever.
That's right.
And there was a small town in Israel at that time called Modin. And there was a priest in that town called Mattathias. He was a Hasmonean priest. He had 5 sons. And the emissaries, or the captains of the guards of the Syrians, came in to enforce the sacrifice of pigs on an altar. And people all along were accommodating. Amazing things happen. You know, the silent majority sometimes become so silent,
Yes.
they'll never stand up in the face of opposition. And by and large, people were, what are we going to do? They're going to kill us if we don't do this, so we better do what they tell us anyway. But Mattathias, he said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to allow this to happen. And so when the first Jew showed up and was going to make this sacrifice, Mattathias, the priest, drew a sword and killed the Jew. And then he and his 5 sons killed all the officers of the army there. Well, that's called rebellion, that's called insurrection.
Yes, it is.
And now we have a war going on. And so whereas the Greeks thought, now we control all this, now we've got this rebellion going on in the middle of Israel. And the Maccabees, you can read about it in the intertestamental book called First Maccabees and Second Maccabees.
Yes.
The Maccabees, these brothers banded together and got people aligned with them and said, we're going to fight off this oppression.
Yes.
So they went to war. And amazing stories, because they never should have won. But it's amazing what happens when God gets on your side.
That's right.
And God shows up and he aids them, and they end up not only defeating the occupiers, but they repossess Jerusalem. And they repossess the temple. Now imagine, they come into Jerusalem. It had been a conquered city. The temple had been desecrated. And so they come in and they succeed in liberating Jerusalem. And now they have to go about the task of cleansing the temple, purifying it, because it's been defiled, desecrated.
Yes, it is.
And in the midst of this process, getting the priests together, going to light the candelabras for the temple, they found a cruse of oil, because the process by which you made this oil to light the candles was a lengthy process.
Yes.
And they found a cruse of oil that they could fill the candelabra with, the menorah.
Yes.
And so they could light the menorah candles, but the cruse of oil, according to tradition, only could last for one day.
One day. That's right.
But miracle of miracles, we know that song that is sung, a great miracle
has happened
here. Hanukkah, a great miracle has happened here. And what was the miracle?
The miracle was that cruse of oil that was only supposed to last one day lasted 8.
8 days. It kept burning and burning and burning. God is always...
It was a supernatural burning.
Oh, yes, absolutely. God is always the God of more than enough,
Yes,
and
he
God
is.
is always the
Yes,
God who
he
said
is.
He'll meet your needs. And in this case, Hanukkah is the celebration not only of the rededication of the temple, not only of the liberation of Jerusalem, but Hanukkah is a celebration of that great miracle that happened when that cruse of oil continued to burn until they could make a new supply of holy oil. And so the menorah remained lighted for those 8 days.
That's right.
And so the greatest symbol of Hanukkah is
The menorah.
the menorah.
That's right.
And you will find that in Jewish homes and more in many Christian homes
that are learning about this.
and Christians who begin to celebrate their Jewish roots will find that they'll buy a menorah and they'll light the candles, and there's different kinds of traditions. Some Jewish traditions are they light all eight of the candles on the first night, and then less each night. The major tradition is you light one,
Yes, increasing the light.
Increasing the light.
I think I would like that one.
I like that one.
I like
Actually,
that one,
I
but
like to light
go from
all
darkness
8.
to light.
I like to light all 8 every night.
Every night. Yes, full light.
And you know, you put this candle in your window. You know, I heard a story years ago of a Jewish family that had moved into a Christian neighborhood, and it was a place in Europe. It was after World War II, but it came to Hanukkah, and they were really concerned. They wanted to celebrate Hanukkah, and they wanted to light the menorah candles in the window in their home, but there was that leftover apprehension of the anti-Semitism that had been there. but they put it in and lit it on the first night. And when it came to the second night, as they went to light their candles, they looked up and down the street, and all the Christian families in the neighborhood had gone out and purchased menorahs and had lit them. Amazing. A statement of solidarity.
That's for sure.
So Hanukkah is a great celebration of the triumph of truth over falsehood.
Yes.
It is a great story of the fact that when the oppressor seems to control God's place, God's temple, that God will still get the last say.
That's right. As long as one man will stand up for him.
That's right.
As long as one man will stand in the gap for him.
And it was one man.
It was one man.
Matthias.
It's amazing what one man can do.
That's right. Started an entire
That's
revolution there. And you know, I think about that when when we go to Jerusalem today and we consider what happened to the temple.
Yes.
In AD 70 or 70 CE of the Common Era, the Romans took over Jerusalem and destroyed the temple. And Yeshua had predicted that. He said not one stone would be left on another stone. And in fact, that's what happened. And you can go there as we have and traveled with groups as we go along the roadway that's been unearthed there. You can see where the stones.
Yes. And it's the actual road that Yeshua himself walked on.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And they've unearthed it all.
And in fact, if you'd be interested in going with us, we as a church take a group once a year to go to Jerusalem, to go to Israel. We go to places a lot of tourists don't go. We do go into the Shamron, Samaria and Judea. We get to meet the people in the settlements. We get to see what the life of the Jewish people is.
We do.
But we do get to Jerusalem, and those mammoth walls that are there. It is amazing that we live in a day and age now when the Palestinian leaders are trying to say that there never was a temple there.
That's right.
Absolutely amazing that they would, I mean, that's insanity, that they would say there's no temple there. Actually, even the Muslims in 1925 had a little pamphlet where they acknowledged that Solomon's temple once stood there, but the current mythology is there were never Jews in Jerusalem and there was never...
That's why they go about so diligently trying to erase all the artifacts that they find that confirm that they were there
That's
first.
right. That's right. And it's amazing because you and I both know that Jerusalem is mentioned over 600 times in the Bible. In the Quran, Jerusalem is mentioned zero times, not even once is it mentioned.
That's right.
When we go there now and I look at the Muslim mosque sitting up on Temple Mount, you know that someday that's coming down.
That's right.
Because the Bible says there will be a new temple. There will be a third temple there. And it will be another Hanukkah. It will be another great celebration. But Hanukkah is one of those non-Levitical appointed feasts, but one that Yeshua honored.
He himself celebrated it.
And he talked there. I know that was a great time for him to talk about being the light of the world.
The light of the world, that's right.
So here you've got people coming to Jerusalem and they're celebrating that the menorah was lit and its light was now going out into the world. And Yeshua stands up and says, I
am that light.
Yeah, I am the light of the world. I am the light of the world. And so when a Jewish person heard Yeshua say that, at that particular feast, they made the connection that I think many Christians would miss.
That's right.
They made a connection that just like God performed a miracle, so a miracle is now happening in the life of Yeshua himself.
That's right.
The great I Am is now present with us.
He is.
The light of the world is now present with us. And so that celebration of Hanukkah is very appropriate for Christians to participate in.
Yes, it is.
And it gets to go for 8 days.
That's right.
So you get to have this eighth day celebration. But I think it's also, for us as believers, to think of the fact that the celebration of Hanukkah is about the cleansing of the temple.
Yes, it is.
And when we look at our New Testament scriptures, we find there that there is an awareness that we are the temple of God. In fact, 1 Corinthians chapter 3 says something about that. Why don't you read that for us?
Yes, 1 Corinthians 3, verses 16 and 17 say, Do you know that you yourself are God's temple and that God's Spirit lives in you. If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy him. For God's temple is sacred, and you are that temple.
Wow. Why don't you read that in the Amplified Bible? That
Yes,
really
the
gives some
Amplified
meaning to it.
well, where the other one stops, the Amplified keeps going on and
Okay.
adds a little bit more. It says, do you not discern and understand that you, the whole church at Corinth, are God's temple, his sanctuary, and that God's Spirit has his permanent dwelling in you, to be at home in you collectively as a church and also individually? If anyone does hurt to God's temple, or corrupts it with false doctrines, or destroys it, God will do hurt to him and bring him to the corruption of death and destroy him. For the temple of God is holy, sacred to him, and that temple you, the believing church, and its individual believers are.
So when we as Christians come to appreciate our Jewish roots,
Yes.
We have an added dimension that the Apostle Paul brings. Now, let's remember, Paul was a rabbi.
Yes, he was.
You know, when Paul would say, I'm going to open the Scriptures for you, I'm going to bring understanding of the Scriptures to you, what Scriptures was he talking about?
He was talking about the Old Testament, what they refer to as the Old Testament.
There was...
That's all they had.
That's right, there was no New Testament.
That's right, there was no New Testament.
So we
in fact, that when Yeshua spoke about the Scriptures and the Word, and when he referred to it, that's all he had.
Right, he wasn't saying, turn to 1 Corinthians.
No, he was not.
It didn't exist.
That's right.
And so when Paul is writing to the Gentiles in Corinth, Paul is teaching them, and you know, a lot of times we've looked at Paul as a Gentile. We've looked at Paul as, where did he get these new ideas, as if somehow he brought them from somewhere else. These all came out of his training as a rabbi.
That's right.
If you look at the Mishnah, if you look at the teachings of the rabbi, if you look at the expositions of the oral Torah, you find that the rabbis were digging into the Word of God.
That's right.
And bringing out truth.
Yes, they
and
were.
so I believe that when